Hey everybody, it's Bust here to get you ready for the release of the 3.17 patch. And so, the Darkin Saga Domination will be upon us here in about, I don't know, 3 or 4 hours if you watch these videos as they come out. And I wanted to take a hot minute to talk about the things I think we'll see in the upcoming patch, how the meta will shape out, the cards I like and the cards I don't. And so, again, this is the release of the Darkin Saga Domination, the next set in the Darkin Saga. This is going to bring Varus and Seraphine and Vayne upon us. But before we talk about the new cards, there was a small change to the old ones. And this is still a pretty big factor in the format in this Nami. Nami, of course, was a big dominating factor of the previous format. Even 2 patches ago, Nami was starting to get pretty strong. I think something like 28 of the 32 decks in the NA seasonals were all sporting Nami, and so she's definitely in a spot to where she needed to be nerfed. And so now on her level 2, she just distributes +2 attack instead of +2 attack and +1 health. I don't think this is really enough to get her knocked out of the format. I think that Riot probably severely underrated how these new cards were going to interact with Nami. And we're certainly going to see her stick around as a force in the format. I was expecting that there might potentially be changes to Lee Sin as well, but it was just Nami. And so, in my opinion, it's kind of the way that you attack Nami and these units on the board. It's their health just doesn't matter. It never mattered. You're not going to be able to mystic shot your way through the incoming tide of elusives. And so I think she's still going to be out here in full force. And so as we think of these new cards and look at these new cards, we do have to think about the strategies that were good against Nami. That's the things that are just quite aggressive. Things like scouts, Poppy Tarek, things like pirates, your tokens decks of the world, your Annie Gens, all of these really, really aggressive decks were quite good against Nami. And the things that tended to fail against her were decks that either needed to cast a big spell or play a big unit. It's just a giant waste of time to come down and play a 7-cost unit when your opponent's just going to stun it, or Homecoming, or Will of Ionia, or keep it irrelevant for the remainder of the game. And it's also tough to play expensive spells like Feel the Rush when your opponent has access to Deny. And so Nami, again, she's kind of okay against the mid-range decks, really gets feasted on by the fast decks of the format, and then the slower decks of the format just have absolutely no way to beat her. And so, again, I was expecting a little bit more. I thought they might change her cost or her attune or whatnot, but none of that came to fruition. It's just the health on the weakest units. Fully expect her to get nerfed again. So that's enough with Nami, though. Enough. Let's get her out of the way and head on into these new cards. Okay, and so first and foremost, the cards I wanted to talk about were the new Darkin equipment. I think all of these are fantastically strong. I thought that the Darkin Bloodletters and the Darkin support one out of Targon from the previous set were some of the absolute best cards in the game. And I don't think that these are going to be any different. And so we have some real strong ones here. And the Darkin Harpoon gives +1 attack and fearsome. Then when you attack, you get to draw the card next turn. Adds another big, just probably wins the game style of card to the board. Very good early, very good late. We have the Darkin Harpoon. This is the P and Z version, getting +2 attack and quick attack. Again, quite strong, making really powerful, aggressive attackers. And then finding Ratu on the back end, where he has the attack, draw 2, make those cards cost 2 less. Another card that should just outright win you the game. And then what the internet is the most hype about at the moment, the Darkin Aegis. This +1/+1, along with Tough, is quite good in Demacia when you can come out, attach this onto your various challenger units to have them be quite strong early. Attach it to something like Poppy to ensure that she gets to come out and boost the entirety of your squad. And then the flip unit is extremely cheap at 5 mana, right? Most of these cost 6, 7, 8 mana to pull off. Jor All only costing 5, though, and him also being incredibly powerful as a 4/3 tough unit for 5. That makes, when your units are attacking, your opponent's spells cost 2 more. And so really powerful cards. I don't think that we're going to struggle to find a home for any of these. And I think it's something to really kind of keep in mind as we do our deck building in these upcoming formats. If you lean in the direction of aggro, as I like to do, if we're going to take our previous comment into mind and needing to be, exceptionally aggressive to take care of the Nami decks, these cards do have a place that fit, right? We played a lot of the support Targon one and things like Poppy Tarek. And the real value they give you in these situations is it's very good early and good late, right? And so if we're wanting to kind of have this idea and concept of playing against Nami in mind, it's very dangerous to just be including 7 and 8 cost cards into your deck that don't outright win the game. But as we have these cheap equipment that can double up as our expensive cards, it gives us a great avenue of attack against the likes of Nami if we're going to have this a really aggressive or scouts based style deck, including the Demacian Aegis in it, and then having access to a nice high-powered unit after we trade off our early Petricite Broadwing or if we trade off our early Fleet Feather Tracker. And so really excited about all of these. I think they're all exceptionally good. I do worry about the things that start to happen when our opponents are attacking with Stai Ratu in terms of pulling off degenerate combos, but let's be real. If this guy's attacking, he's already won the game anyways. Okay, so in terms of champions, all of them are quite relevant. We do occasionally see these new champions come out that just aren't going to do anything with the things like power creep and the rotations haven't hit yet. It's very tough to have your champion be better than 70 other champions or however many are in the game right now. And so I think all of these are quite relevant, quite strong. Varus here to take advantage of the new double cast style cards. Momentous Choice has become a staple of basically every Ionia deck in the format. And I think these new cards coming out with Varus give him lots of interesting powers. But the thing I always like to come down and evaluate with these champions are, do they come down and either do something unique? So if we say, well, look at something like Teemo or someone like Nora, they come down and do something unique. They don't do anything with like combat stats, but they add some kind of effect that you aren't normally getting to your deck. And so that's the kind of one piece. The other piece is this a efficient unit in terms of stats, right? That's the kind of what you can break all of the champions down into, to where someone like Teemo is relevant not because of his attacking stats, but because of his abilities. And then someone like Darius is quite powerful because of his stats, not so much the abilities he brings to the board, which would be none. And so when we look at Varus, he kind of hits on both sides of that equation, right? He has some interesting abilities and things going on with him. He has the cultist flavor, since he's in the Runeterra champion space, to where you get to include the cultists. This should give you access to a couple of useful units, but mainly access to the double cost spells. He's very easy to get access to since he has the play 3 cultist ability to draw him. He adds some of these equipment themes to our deck in the Darkin Bow coming in. And so he does like a lot of stuff that you would just ask for a champion, right? Creating cards, altering your deck, having some card advantage tied into him. He does a lot of stuff in that sense, and so it's quite good there. But he also is quite strong in terms of stats, right? He comes down and is immediately equipped with the Darkin Bow. Doesn't necessarily do something immediately, but it's very easy to chain some stats into the Darkin Bow. And then he has the most important ability for our champions to have when we're looking at them in terms of stats. He comes out with Overwhelm, right? As we look at these formats, if we say, oh shit, I got to play against Nami today, what's that thing that I'm always preaching that our units need to have? They either have to have Elusive, Overwhelm, or Rally. And Varus comes at us with the Overwhelms. And so he kind of, meets the eye test, as we would say, and that he has good stats. He has Overwhelm. He can kind of self-protect himself on attacks. He can probably come together with some ridiculous combos in terms of doubling up the Darkin Bow. And so I think he's all around a quite powerful unit and something that we're certainly going to see play with in the new set. Sorry, Ornn. I'd love to see play from Ornn. I don't think we even made a video with Ornn. I know I played a bit of him in the Path of Champions, but I don't think we featured him over the past 2 months. And it makes me a little sad that we didn't come out and showcase all of the champions. But next champion, Seraphine, another quite powerful one, right? We would probably be maybe not super happy, but we would consider playing a 5-stat 2-drop that just generates a card when you play it. If you can come up with some neat things to do with those cards being 2-cost spells, then great. But just right from the start, again, she does some interesting things. A very defensive unit. Control deck should be interested in this. She comes down and immediately replaces herself with another spell. And so as she continues on, when she comes in and levels up, she does this spell copying kind of thing. And so she still creates the 2-cost card in your hand, but when you play a new spell that costs 2 or less, you copy it with the same targets. And so this gets to tie into all kinds of other things. You can very easily figure out some easy combos to be pulling off with Seraphine. It's like, do you want to play Ezreal and get some multiple targets? Do you want to, say, play with Varus and double up on our multicast spells? And so lots of interesting angles that this can take. It is worth noting it says new, though, right? So don't get like really hype about having this big collection of spells that you want to cast over and over and over again. Not the way it works, but this is something very powerful to potentially build around. And then she does have a very strong flip and a 2-cost spell that deals 2 to a unit. And then if you've played 6 other new spells in the game, so her flip ability, you get to deal 1 to another unit. And so another really high-powered removal option coming out of P&Z, strong with Seraphine, strong with things like Ezreal, and this kind of copying feature that's been running around is potentially quite strong. I was always disappointed in Expedition. One of the classic Riot blunders for you all that don't remember is there's the card Insightful Investigator. That's the one that it's a 4-cost 3/3. That when you play a 2-cost spell, you get to draw a card. That card gains fleeting. You start to think of things like that when you see Seraphine coming down and casting all these 2-cost spells. I don't think that's worthwhile for Constructed, but this would have been quite powerful in Expedition. But in Expedition, they took the 2-cost Matters deck and then just took the Insightful Investigator out of it. That was one of the intern's saddest days at the office, just completely not understanding what the deck was supposed to do and then just completely butchering it. But nonetheless, Seraphine, I think she'll be reasonable. Again, if you want to just compare her to something, say, like Zillion, as to where very defensive stats, does something as soon as you play it, has some upside built into it. It's not too tough to find a home that wants to have access to these abilities. Last but not least, we have Vayne. Vayne is the one that I'm sure we're just going to really dive into, and play an excessive amount in our channel. She is the Domination champion, which we love to come out and play. So if we want to take a quick look at her, when she's summoned around start, she creates tumbles in hand. If you already have one in hand, it costs 1 less. She flips when you attack 4 times. So it's very similar to the flip of Misfortune or Quinn that wants to see you attack. Attacking multiple times is always super good. If we take a peek at Tumble, this gives equip an ally with an equipment in hand that costs 2 or less, and then it starts a free attack. Very powerful ability as well. This is where you can kind of find space to say get big overwhelm attacks in, or get your additional attacks for the turn. Lots of very powerful things that can be used with Tumble. Say it's your opponent's turn and you have a scout unit, and then you tumble your scout unit, you get the attack token back. Just lots of really powerful combos that come out of cards like Tumble. And then what did we say at the very beginning of the video in terms of Nami? You have to be able to attack around them, attack through them, or attack twice. You got to get that rally. And so having the rallies built into a champion with Tumble, very powerful kind of ability coming out of there. Last but not least, with Vayne, on her flip side, she makes the tumbles cost 0, which makes them very easy to pull off. And so this is just, a loyal Badger Bear with upside. And so I think Vayne will be seeing a lot of play from our squad. Maybe we get to, say, play Scouts but without Quinn and slot in Vayne. Or on the flip side, maybe we get to play Scouts but without Misfortune, and then double up in these kind of common attacks in another way. Really curious about the ways we get to chase after this. And okay, so as we make our way out, I wanted to call out the cards that are the most exciting to me. Some may enjoy them, some may not, but as it comes to attacking, that's a thing that we love, and the Buru Cultist really enjoys attacking. I'm surprised to see this one come down so strong. I haven't seen anyone bitching or complaining about its level of strength, but just having the 2/2 for 2 is just such a stat line that you're seeing so commonly in the 1-drop space, and it's very easy to get this deal 1 ability going. Like Pirates is already playing a bunch of equipped units. All of the other basically every aggro deck in the format is playing equip cards, right? And then you can take that to the next step, and many of them are even including some of the Darkin cards. And so if you're like that easily getting access to good equipped cards, because the equipment are so strong and good and aggressive anyways, something like the Buru Cultist just has so much power to pop off. And I can't tell you the number of times both I've just ran Jagged Butchers out on the first turn, but not so much because I don't care about value, or not so much that I care about its attack power, as much as that it can survive both a Make It Rain and it can survive a Twisted Fate. You run into so many issues with the likes of the Nami decks having the Twisted Fate and Make It Rain package that your 1 health units are especially vulnerable, especially when you're starting to consider that you're playing things like Mirai Warden and the 1-drop that does damage when you attack. And so just having another really strong 2-power attacker early that can get some of these additional abilities going, quite powerful and strong. We'll see if this eventually makes its way into decks like involving Jin. I'm pretty sure that this skill ability counts for Jin, and then you can start playing it in things like Anti-Jin as well. If it has a place there, I'm not entirely certain, but lots of aggro decks are going to be quite happy to have access to the Buru Cultist. I feel like this is one of the sleepers that no one is really amped or excited about. In terms of not sleepers, Rune Squire, incredibly strong. If you were following along with us here through the time of seasonals, we brought out Fizz Riven. And the thing that we're finding with Fizz Riven is that it's still a real deck. Nobody plays it, but it's an incredibly powerful deck in the meta right now. The downside to it is it dies to a lot of the decks that are just good against Nami Twisted Fate, right? It doesn't have a good matchup against like tokens. It doesn't have a good matchup against the likes of Anti-Jin. But it's still quite a powerful archetype. And the thing that we're finding in a lot of our games were that you just didn't care about the Papercraft Dragon anymore, and you were more than capable of just closing out games with a good Riven attack with the Riven Sword. And the exceptionally powerful thing that we're looking for in all of our games were access to more Reforges. And so we were just basically hard mulliganing every game for Reforges and trying to dig up that sword as fast as we can, because the interactivity packages in the game right now aren't really focused on shutting that kind of thing down. And so I was quite interested to see the Rune Squire come to hang out here with her Rune Weaver and be a new and surprise card in this set to me. I think the Rune Squire has a lot of potential, and we need to kind of keep in the back of our heads that these Riven Reforge combos are quite strong, and whether or not you look to play that with something like Victor or play it with Fizz or whatever, lots of really powerful things add up when you get more access to additional Reforges. That consistency is so incredibly strong. Really excited about the Rune Squire. Up next, in the same vein, we have Curse of the Tomb. And so if you want to separate from playing something like Fizz Riven and look towards the Renekton and Nar style OTKs with the Papercraft Dragon, the Curse of the Tomb does work with these big overwhelm attacks. And so I do believe I read from one of the devs on Twitter that said the way that this basically works is the double damage to the unit, or I guess I should say the way that this works in this game is, say we're going to deal 3 damage to a unit, that gets doubled up to 6. And so if that unit had 2 health, we would overwhelm 4. And the reason we have to make that distinction is that, say we had a 3 attack unit, it now attacked into that 2 health unit, and then we had 1 damage of overwhelm. That 1 damage would then get doubled up to 2. We weren't entirely certain how that was going to work. They said it gets added up all in the front. And then the extra damage just spills over. So if we're attacking with a Ruin Runner, that's going to be a 12 base damage, and then you just don't need access to Papercraft Dragon anymore, right? Since he's already going to be dealing double damage that round. You have just a very easy OTK type solution to where you don't have to play Bandle City and you don't have to play 6-cost cards. And so the downside to that style of OTK is your opponent doesn't have to block it, right? If you want to get the double damage in, your opponent needs to actually be blocking. And so if you kind of preemptively Curse of the Tomb, your opponent may be like, yeah, I'm going to think twice on that one. I'm not going to take those extra damages you send my way. But a very powerful card that you have to give respect to, being able to come in at burst speed and deal 6, 8, 10 damage is quite strong and something that we do need to take note of. Very powerful stuff from the Curse of the Tomb. On to the next one. On a different vein, we have the Expanse's Protection. This is something that makes me, of course, initially think of Varus. If we're going to have Varus build up to the 10 attack bow, be a 15 attack overwhelmer, getting access to these quick, cheap, and easy spell shields is quite good. But this can be used elsewhere as we see these burst spell shield spells run around. You aren't playing Bastion because you really want that +1/+1. You're playing Bastion because it gives you spell shield. Now, granted, Bastion is permanent and this is not, but this can give you a much cheaper way to get access to that spell shield you need and potentially come in and close out the games. I suspect that this is going to be a quite common combat trick, depending on how the meta breaks out, right? If your opponents are playing burst speed removal, you don't want it. If they're playing a bunch of homecomings and vengeances, then you do. And so very high potential for really strong tempo swings. And then if you're playing the dumb decks we like to play, you can start to be like, oh man, it's just a 4 mana to rally and then 2 mana to protect a unit now. And it's much easier to pull off big combo turns when a piece of your combo only costs 2 mana. So very powerful stuff. I expect to see this coming around quite a bit. And our last one is the Unworthy Soul. And so people are always like, I should say, people, at least in the Twitterverse, are immediately drawn to Unworthy Soul and comparing it to Nami Twisted Fate and saying Nami Twisted Fate doesn't want it, which I think is fair. I'm not a Nami Twisted Fate player. I'm not entirely certain what it does and does not want, but I do know that the physical card Homecoming was at one point nerfed to 5 mana because it was too good, and now when we come down and have access to Will of Ionia was what got nerfed to 5. But when you now have access to potentially play that for 3, or if we're going to use this in some kind of just like aggressive Zed-based deck, having a 3 mana recall is incredibly good price. And so I'm not surprised that if decks are already wanting to play Worthy Choice or Unworthy Choice, whatever the 1 mana equip spell is cost that doubles up, it should not be too challenging to figure out a way to fit Unworthy Soul into particularly aggressively based Ionia decks. And so another one to watch out for, high tempo plays coming out of the Unworthy Soul. Looks like, is that like Lee Sin jumping out of Kane's body or something? I don't know. That's probably what it is. That's probably what's happening with this card. But I was looking for a way to come through. I was looking through the spoiler. I wanted to find something to be salty about, something that the people out there have been going on and on about and just completely wrong with. And I don't feel like the world's been too crazy with this set. I think it's a lot of really impactful cards, not a lot of things that are just immediately being misevaluated, and I think we're in a good space to have a fun 2 months in this lead up to Worlds. And so, good stuff. I'm excited. I hope you're excited too. I hope you're ready to equip your golden spatulas and get out there and do battle. And so, agree or disagree? Be sure to let me know down in the comments. I always love to hear what people have to say about the new set. Gives me some inspiration on what to make for the next few upcoming videos. And it's always good to hear a little bit of discourse, a little bit of disagreement, and what people don't understand in me always being right all of the time. And so, that will do it for us today. Hope everyone enjoyed the video. I hope you're excited, because I'm excited too. And that will do it for us today. So, hope you all have yourselves a good one out there.